Hello, everyone. Welcome to our second presentation on American Sign Language, Morphology, and Syntax. I'm Erick Brito.
I'm Gargi Joshi.
And I'm Michelle Hernandez.
For our project, we looked at several different resources, including handspeak.com, liveprint.com, several journals and articles, and presentation slides from Professor Jeremy Kuhn. We also used our knowledge of English grammar to produce our own analysis of grammar rules.
So we're going to be moving on to part one, which discusses the morphology of the language. So according to Sturko, the ASL is kind of a polysynthetic language. So it's very morphologically complex. Since the language can be considered more polysynthetic, it doesn't have distinct features like being fusional or like agglutinating. Some examples where the morphemes are not easily separable is for the word teacher. The sign itself is a combination of two different signs for teach and agent. And another process that exists is the incorporation of mouth morphemes. And those are also not easily separable for the word. So for example, if you were to say that the size of a book is an average size, you would have to do the sign for the book, like the image shows here, which is closing your hands, opening them in that manner. And then to indicate average size, you would have that mouth morpheme. If you wanted to say smaller size or larger size, you would have a different mouth morpheme for those.
ASL features reduplication greatly, whether partial or not, depending on the sign. A notable type are canonical verb-noun pairs, which are standard ASL signs that, when reduplicated, represent a corresponding noun to a verb. For example, here we have the sign for sit, and when partially reduplicated, becomes a sign for chair. How much the action gets duplicated depends on the speaker, with the range varying greatly. This is one use of partial reduplication, and ASL has many others, such as emphasis, so it isn't a straightforward pattern. A clearer example is the allomorphic compounding of the characteristically adjective morpheme, which causes the hand to rotate. When applied to a noun, it produces three distinct phonologically conditioned actions, pictured here on the right, depending on how many hands are involved in the sign and whether it is balanced or not.
Okay, so the word order for ASL. So the basic word or order, although there's always this distinction between ASL and spoken languages, it does follow a similar structure such as subject, verb, order, SVO. Although it's important to note that just like many other languages, SVO isn't the only word order it has. Because of topicalization, ASL uses OSV, object, subject, verb, far more common than English-speaking people do. Additionally, the word order can differ depending on the usage of time. So mainly people use the topic comment structure, topic meaning possibly subject, possibly object, and comment meaning the comment on the topic, which is your subject or your object. So an example that we have here that shows the time topic comment structure is I washed the car last week. When you translate that into ASL, you put the last week part in front as the time reference, which was last week, using the subject I, the verb wash, and then the object car. So some examples of possible structures. So we have a sentence with a transitive verb and a centennial complement verb. So this means that there's a sentence with a transitive verb, and then the centennial complement verb is a sentence within itself. So it's a sentence within another sentence using a transitive verb. So we came up with the sentence, she thought they baked a cake for the party. So thought is the transitive verb, and they baked a cake for the party is the sentential complement verb. And when you translate it into ASL, it's she think, they bake cake party, using she and they as inflection references, meaning that when someone uses the she, they don't say the word she, but they point to something. So they point to the person she, and then they point to the person they. And when it's pronouns, they used one finger, and when it's well, not pronouns and just another noun like they use like the whole hand. So another example would be like a prepositional phrase. So that gallops around track, with around being the preposition and gallops being the verb. So here we have it's a in ASL, it's a direct translation, gallops around the track, with gallops being the verb and then the preposition and the noun. So then there's sentences with adverbs. So a sentence with an adverb is I am very happy, with happy being an intransitive verb and very being the adverb that's modifying. Oh, happy can be an adjective or an intransitive verb, and very is modifying that happy. So when you translate that into ASL, it's me. The direct translation is me happy. However, the happy changes with non-manual markers, meaning that someone could emphasize larger the happiness. So when they sign happy, it would be at a greater volume per se, to show that someone is really happy. So then we say that the adverb is very, and it modifies the adjective in the word and can exist without it. So a noun phrase with an adjective and a determiner, such as a demonstrative, is the phrase that brave kid, with that being the determiner and brave kid being the noun phrase, the adjective and the noun phrase. In ASL, as we'll see later, they don't really use much determiners. So brave kid is the translation into ASL. And again, as we did it in the first sentence, that brave kid together means pointing to a kid and then signing brave kid. So you point to the kid and then you sign that that kid is brave. Okay. So the part 2 is next. So based on the examples that we did above, we came up with phrase structure grammar rules that seem to befit the examples we have above. So the first one is VP rules with a transitive verb and a centennial complement verb, like the first example. So here we came up with structures as verb phrases. So it's a verb phrase is created by another verb phrase and a noun phrase. A verb phrase is created by a transitive verb and a noun phrase, and then a verb phrase is created by a verb S and a sentence. So adverb adjunction, this is where we face something different because adverbs in ASL are not translated the same. So adverbs in a sense get deleted, and to show that there's an adverb, you would use inflections on the verb or whatever it's modifying, because adverbs modify something. So if it's modifying a verb or if it's modifying an adjective, you would show that within your signage. So like in the example below, we have the word badly, but you only sign the word bad and you emphasize that word to include the li that makes it an adverb. Okay, so the next one is the prepositional rules. So the prepositional rule that we found was that a prepositional phrase could be made with a preposition and a noun phrase. Okay, and then the sentence rule, just like in English, we found that a sentence is created with a noun phrase and a verb phrase. And then the NP rules is where it got a bit different because ASL doesn't, like I said before, it doesn't have determiners such as the, I think, and a couple of other ones that are like crucial to English sentences or crucial to translations. So we saw that a noun phrase generally, which is why we wrote it as a rule, is created by just a noun and not just a pronoun. Same with the next rule that a noun phrase is created with a pronoun and just like that, like she. And then based on the examples we have above, does she think they bake cake party? She is a noun phrase, and then think they bake a cake party with think being the transitive verb. Think bake cake party is the sentence, and that entire thing makes a verb phrase based on the rules that we have. And transitive verb and that sentence makes a sentence, makes a verb phrase, and then that noun phrase and that verb phrase makes a sentence. Okay, that was a lot of words. And then on the next slide, we have an example of, I guess, the deletion, quote unquote, of determiners. So the sentence, the English translation is, that man there seems to be lost. And if we see the is not included above and there is also not included, as well as like to be. So this generally, like, it's easier to sign that a man seems to be lost and to show that like where they are being lost, it's like around. Like you just point to that. You don't have an exact word translation. And I think that's like one of the main differences, and it changes a lot of phrase structure grammar rules, the deletion or not having determiners in those rules. Okay.
Here we have an example sentence syntax diagram. The English sentence being, my child failed the test badly yesterday. In this tree, we see a few notable details that my teammate mentioned, such as the initial time location indicator, which is very common in ASL and used almost exclusively at the beginning of a sentence to later create inferences on verb tenses and other aspects of words. You can also see the noun test and how it has no determinant a or the, as well as how the bad sign is inferred to be an adverb from the context of going before a verb instead of explicitly being an adverb.
So here we have information about the typology of ASL. Susan Fisher's research concludes that ASL's head initial with the SVO structure that we mentioned before, the subject, verb, object. But depending on context or intended expression of the sentence, this order can change just depending on what you need to communicate. So Hanspeak has more information about this. For example, one quality of sign language called agent action construction, which means that the noun and the verb occur simultaneously where the hand shape and the movement coexist. So it involves the functions of what we would see in spoken language as adposition, v complement rules. This agent action construction can either be separate or simultaneous. Just to understand a little bit more like just how the verbs can operate, Hanspeak indicates that there are 3 types of verbs. So there's plain verbs that require a subject and an object to describe the context. So for example, for the word understand, you would need to say, I understand you, or you understand me. For indicating verbs, these contain the inflection and show the direction of movement of the context that it's presented in. So the word give, for example, you would need to kind of inflect to indicate where this action is going towards or what the context is in general. And depicting verbs that are also called classifier predicates contain information about the action or state of being. So for this example that we have, it's vehicle, drive by. And here we just have our resources and sources listed on our works cited page. And yeah, thank you so much. So our presentation for ASL.